Hello everybody, Jet here, and welcome to another Victoria-free dev diary, where, as you may notice, I'm doing this slightly differently because I'm going live to talk through this. So, excuse me if I do trip over anything. Obviously I can't take multiple takes here. I just thought it's a quicker way of getting this out, and anybody who does jump into chat, feel free to ask any questions. So obviously this is dev diary free, talking about buildings, here. So, hello again everybody, it's Thursday again, and that means it's time to talk about buildings. Buildings are a core mechanic of Victoria 3, and it's where the pops work to produce resources such as goods. Buildings represent a wide range of industries, businesses and government functions, from humble subsistence farms to complex motor industries and sprawling financial districts. In this dev diary, we're going to broadly cover the main types of buildings and their function in Vicky 3. As always, guys, I'm not a dev. This is all my point of view. Let's pop my proper camera on so I've got you can see me better. But, so I'll go through this with an eye. Feel free to shout what you think in chat, and if there's anything interesting, I'll read it out. High coding, by the way. And yeah, so with that, let's get into this and have a look at all the different types of buildings. To talk about buildings, though, I first have to mention states. States are a concept that you should generally be familiar to anyone who's played some of our games, such as Vicky 2 or Hearts of Iron 4. I mean, we all know what a state is. It's a geographic region of varying size. Sorry, a geographic unit of varying size, in which much of Victoria 3's gameplay takes place. States are where pops live, and more importantly for our subject matter, where buildings are located and built. So obviously it's a state, it's just a random delineation of area which you can build stuff in and do various bits and pieces in. So the first thing here, we've got the state of Gotheland in Sweden, which is a Swedish market. So let's have a look. So that's the overview of the state. The state is a Swedish market. So we've got the flag, various other things which I don't know what I mean. I assume this is a type of resource in it. So iron, maybe? How much infrastructure it's got, how much is used in the access to the market, which is 100%. Its GDP is a percentage, so I don't quite know how that'll be. And how much it generates from tax and how much it costs you. So that's obviously making quite a nice amount of money. And all the buildings we've got in there. So some sort of mill, I think. I know what some of these are. Port, barracks, naval place. But yeah, various different buildings and things. So, and all the information we need. So the population and the standard of living. So 8 to struggling. So 9.2. I don't know what any of that means yet, but it's middling and secure. So most of them are actually fairly well off, though you've got some struggling people. And it has a lot of peasants and a few unemployed. And how much it's growing. So there we go. We will return to states more in later dev diaries, but for now, let's keep talking about buildings. We all love buildings. Before we start on buildings, something that's important to note is that buildings are just places where pops can work and generally do not represent a single building. A single level of government administration, for example, represents the necessary buildings and infrastructure to support a certain number of bureaucrats. Buildings always need qualified pops to work in them to yield any benefit. And an empty building is just that, empty and completely useless. In fact, it's probably costing you money. This holds true even for buildings like railroads and ports that did not need pops to work them in Victoria 2. Now this basically tells me this is going to be the way I'm reading this, it sounds very much like the Stellaris system for pops and buildings. So you can build the buildings and your pops will work in various buildings. You may be able to streamline which ones they work in a bit more, or learn, increase your priorities. But you can't necessarily force them to work in certain buildings. So if you don't have the pops, you can build the buildings, but they're not necessarily going to be providing you with any sort of bonuses or benefits, which is a useful thing to know. Most buildings are directly constructed, but some like the subsistence buildings below, will appear automatically based on certain conditions. When buildings are constructed, the construction uses pop labour and goods, and the costs involved will be subject to market forces. Interesting, so your cost to build a building is not always the same. So I imagine, well, if you will see, so market forces could be anything. So you've got lots of unemployed people, you might be able to get a few, get labour cheaper, and if there's more materials, obviously the materials to build them will be cheaper, but if there's hardly any workers and materials are scarce, it will obviously drive the price up. Anyway, on to different building types. First out, we have subsistence buildings. These are a special type of highly inefficient buildings that cannot manually be built or destroyed, but rather will appear anywhere in the world where there is arable land that isn't being used for another type of building. The vast majority of the world's population starts the game working in subsistence buildings as peasants, and much of the game's industrialization process is finding more productive employment for your peasants. So yeah, that makes sense. If you don't have a job or anything in this land, you're going to be in a subsistence thing on it. So peasants eke out a mere living on subsistence farm, contributing little to the GDP and taxes per capita. So let's have a look at this. This is Gotheland again. It's 0.9 in red, which I assume means it's costing us money rather than gaining it. Average weekly wage and weekly taxes. So you are gaining taxes from there. So that's its productivities. That's obviously something different. So obviously, but it's not good. This is a subsistence building, which is highly inefficient building that appears when there's unused arable land in the state. As soon as you start exploiting the potential using it, this building will automatically get downsized. So that's 26 size. So 26 whatevers of subsistence farms there. Another special type of building is urban centres. Like subsistence buildings, they are automatically created rather than built, with the level of urban centre in the state being tied to the amount of urbanisation generated by its other buildings. Urban centres primarily employ shopkeepers and provide a number of important local functions that we will get into at a later point. Interesting. So here's our urban centre. Again, this is in Gotheland. Sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly. Lovely, interesting building with a statue there. Its productivity is 8.6 as compared to that 0.9. I don't know what these up and downs mean. Productivity per employees. So productivity is going up, employees is going down, and opposite there. Interesting. Okay. Let's have a look here. So this is an urban centre which automatically appears, so we've already gone through that. One level of urban centre is created for each 100 urbanisation in the state. There we go. And production methods, shops, I don't know, and trams. We'll see what they mean. I assume they're different things. I'm not entirely sure. What do you reckon that is, guys? I mean, no trams and no gas lights? Yeah, that's going to say there's no gas lights, no lighting, which means it's less, and no trams, which means it's less. I think, do you reckon I'm right there? I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, on to the next one while we have to think about that. Next up, we have government buildings. These are buildings that are fully funded by the state, i.e. you, and provide crucial civil services required for the smooth running of a Victorian nation. Examples include government administrations where bureaucrats produce bureaucracy for the administration of incorporated states and funding of institutions, and universities where academies produce innovation for technological progression. So bureaucrats work in government administrations to provide bureaucracy, the lifeblood of the government. So here we go, we've got a government admin building. So employment 20k, average annual wage £8, so nearly 9 times what the subsistence farm was average pay was. Oh no, that one, yeah, wow. And provides a decent, weekly taxes to us and things. And obviously we've got various other bits and pieces which tell us things. Other things we can look at, which obviously we can't see yet. I don't know what that means. Administration, I would assume. But obviously this is costing us money in the wages it's spending. But it's government administration, so for everybody working there, it's increasing your administration capacity, or bureaucracy capacity as it's called in this, which means you can administer more regions in the game. So if you want to be a massive colonial nation, you want lots and lots of these. Hang on, let's full screen this. Oh, no, never mind. Okay. So, on to the next bit then. Anything else I can pull from that? I don't think so. The counterpart of government buildings is private industries. The vast majority of buildings in Wiki3 fall under this category, which includes a broad range of industries such as non-subsistence farms, plantations, mines, and factories. Unlike government buildings, private industries are not owned by the state, but rather by pops such as capitalists and aristocrats, who reap the profits they bring in and pay wages to the other pops working there. Usually, at least, under certain economic conditions, the ownership of buildings may be radically different. So it sounds like we're going to have some fun options there to try and reform our nation for the glorious revolution at some point. We'll see, that could be fun to do. Anyway, many of these buildings are limited by locally available resources such as arable land for agriculture and simply how much iron is available in the state for iron mines. Urban buildings such as factories, however, are only limited by how many people you can cram into the state, simulating the more densely populated nature of cities. In short, there is no system of building slots or anything like that, as we want limitations on buildings to function in a sensible and realistic way. I'm not sure I get what that means. I think it means that certain buildings will be available in certain places, and you're not going to be able to just randomly choose buildings to build there. Also, I'm not entirely sure if that means you build the private buildings. I think, or they just automatically happen. I get it. So a state will have the potential to have a factory in it, so it will already be there. And it will be owned by aristocrats, and it will slowly fill up as time once you meet the requirements for it to appear. I think. I could be wrong there. Which is an interesting thing. So actually, yeah, let's look up here. Look up here. I think I saw something up here. So yes, here, we've got an iron mine there, but it's grey because it's not being used. Now, I assume as time goes on and things, that will just tick over to be used automatically. Whereas these are government buildings, which probably need you to build. Whereas these, because they're private buildings, will probably automatically happen, though I could be very, very wrong there. We'll see. So there are several different types of urban buildings below resource buildings, which are private industry here, so fishing, lumber and iron, urban centre there, and I can build more buildings here, but I can't build more resource buildings. I've just get what's there. I don't know, is that a factory? I don't know, I can't tell. An unused... I love the way I keep hovering over this like it's going to tell me what it does. An unused arable land, so subsistence farms and real farms. That's not an arable. So that's the... Oh no, unused arable land is... So that's the subsistence. This is a cattle farm and a cereals farm, a wheat farm there. Okay. Finally, there are development buildings. These are often, but not always, government buildings that distinguish themselves by providing vital state-level functions. A couple of examples are barracks that recruit and train soldiers from the local population, and railways that provide infrastructure and other buildings. Other buildings need to bring their goods to market. Oh, provide the infrastructure. Sorry, I got myself confused there. Anyway, from left to right, barracks, port, naval bases, and railways. Okay. So to finish up this dev diary, I just want to mention that building up your country is meant to be a more hands-on experience in Victoria 2, as this is absolutely a core to the society building aspect of the game, and forms a major part of the game's core loop. This naturally also means that we need to give the player the necessary tools to manage their buildings in a large empire, which may involve some sort of autonomous building construction, though we haven't yet nailed down exactly what we want, what form that would take. and whether it will involve decision making on the part of the investor class. Ultimately, though, we want the player, not the AI, to be the more primarily in charge of development of the country. So that's interesting. So it sounds like they're not quite sure on exactly how it's going to be fully implemented yet and how much automation they want. Well, that's it. There is, of course, a lot in here, such as production methods, that will receive further explanation in the many more dev diaries we have planned. So tune in next week for more. And while we are here, let's have a look at the dev responses to see what interesting things have been being said there. I really like the change to require POPs of the ports and railways. Looks pretty promising. Will there be cosmetic difference between buildings of different cultures and religions? We're not ready to discuss the map yet, but there will definitely be a lot to share with you in the future. It kind of says yeah. Presumably they turn the 10 extra money into dividends, which is a thing. This is correct. Cash reserves fill up and more profits are drawn as dividends. I don't know. Just trying to look through. Did I read right that you can create a megalopolis in southern Sweden with thousands of pops? There might be a sort of practical limit. Okay. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to go through all of these little bits and pieces, so we are going to leave it there. Thank you to those few of you who did tune in. As I said, this was very ad hoc. It was literally designed to get it out as quickly as possible, rather than doing my usual recording, then editing, then uploading, which ends up taking over an hour. So this was just a quicker way of getting it out. But whenever I do something like this, even if it's ad hoc, guys, feel free to ask questions in chat. And thank you to everybody who has watched this live or watches it later on. I hope you've enjoyed it. And of course, if you'd like to see more stuff like this or watch any of my Let's Plays, please like and subscribe. And with that, an extra special thank you to all of my channel members and patrons. You really do help make all this possible. And thank you to everybody for watching. Cheers, guys.